Middlesbrough has produced a lot of characters. Uh, where do I begin? Probably the first one everyone's heard of is Captain Cook. Uh, I was 200, over 200 years ago now, maybe 250. But in recent years, um, obviously Lee Duffy, people are familiar with him. The Golden Boy, Wilf Mannion. Chris Rea, the voice of Middlesbrough, in my opinion. I'm a massive, massive Chris Rea fan. Just done a few miles there. Listen to Chris. He's from Groville, which is the same estate as Brian Clough, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. Jonathan Woodgate, Stewie Downing, Chubby Brown, Wendy Richards, which was Pauline from EastEnders, Brian Tilsley from Coronation Street, Jenny South, Amelia Lilly, Tony Mowbray, Gary Pallister, Stuart Ripley. There's loads. Chris Kamara, Park End, Middlesbrough chairman. He's from Park End. Steve Gibson. Who else has there been? Do you know what? I had loads in my head. Bob Mortimer, he's from Tollsby. I had loads in my head that I was just gonna bang off for this video. Don Revy was from Middlesbrough. Cornelius Carr, Paul Truscott, boxing champions. Anyway, so the main one who I'm absolutely obsessed with these days, and I could kick myself because I used to see him about when I was young. So, I mean, my son's 14 now, and he's obsessed with football. So, obviously, I've been Celtic games forever, my dad. But sometimes I'd go to Ayresome Park when I was a young'un and just, get autographs and that. And I used to see Brian Clough there. I must have been I think it was the last year Middlesbrough were in Ayresome Park. So my son's 14 now, and he looks at footballers like gods. And I was the same. So I used to loiter around Ayresome Park for autographs, and there was no cameras there was no phones, but I used to just love to just look at people and think, oh God, it's Alex Ferguson. I remember getting Alex Ferguson's autograph when I was 14. This is how actually strange it must have been. I remember touching him on the back and thinking, I've touched Alex Ferguson. But anyway, I used to see Brian Clough quite a lot. And I knew he was a manager at Nottingham Forest, but I didn't know how much of an absolute god he was. So I'd love, what a character he was. I study him quite a lot now. I watch his videos most nights, and for what he'd done in football, he retired quite early, but his goal ratio for Middlesbrough was phenomenal, absolutely staggering. So as a footballer, he retired when he was something like 28. But he was like, he could have been an absolute great if he'd never finished early. I mean, I think he's. I'm just going to say he scored 200 goals for Middlesbrough, but definitely 100. But it was a scary statistic when you look at it. So anyway, and obviously he made his name for Derby, got Derby basically won the league, and Nottingham Forest. When back then it was a frightening Liverpool side. So not only did he won back-to-back European Cups. And last year I remember being sat with Martin O'Neill, And Martin's kind of took a lot of Clough's football management skills on with him. Big, ugly, horrible centre backs. You know, your Bobo Baldis, your Mialbis, your Stan Vargas. Who else is there? Val Harlands. Long ball, 5 at the back, 3 at the back, big monsters. And, you know, I spoke to Martin and he said, you know what, Jamie? He said, Brian Clough was a celebrity before celebrities were about. He had this kind of aura about him. So he grew up, Clough was raised on 17 Valley Road. So if anyone knows Middlesbrough, it's just right next to Albert Park. So what he would do is he'd walk through Albert Park, train, go and play for Middlesbrough, Ayresome Park, walk home. And sometimes after he played for Middlesbrough, he'd be playing games in Albert Park and in the street and that, but when I seen him when I was young, obviously it was towards the end of Clough's life and he was starting to decline. But, I just knew of him as this manager who'd recently been relegated, if Nottingham Forest. I didn't know him as, today, he was like Jose Mourinho, back years ago, when all the managers, the elite managers, were your Alex Ferguson's and your Ron Atkinson's, even them guys, they knew Clough was the man. I'm a Celtic supporter and everyone talks about Jock Stein and Matt Busby and Shankly, but in my opinion, Brian Clough was the greatest ever. And he also has the best Middlesbrough accent I've ever heard. He reminds me a little bit, I talked to Peter Beagrie quite a little bit, I have done last year for Alan Thompson's book, and Peter Beagrie sounds like a young Brian Clough. When you hear Clough in his prime, he was like young man, and everything was young man, and he had this such unique Middlesbrough accent. What a character! I just wish I'd appreciated meeting him. The greatest ever as far as I'm concerned. His football career, what he done for Nottingham Forest and Derby County. And rightfully so. In Middlesbrough today, there's a statue of Brian Clough in Albert Park. Although I'm told it's going to be moved. There's a fence around it, but I said to Martin O'Neill, I said, next time, Martin, I'm in Middlesbrough, I'll go and video, because obviously Brian Clough was Martin's boss. And that guy he was so charismatic, he could talk, he just had everything. And when I watch some of his interviews and that, and I just, I'm so proud. I just think, do you know what? You are the greatest ever man from Middlesbrough, hands down. Fuck it, no one will ever come close to this guy. He's it's staggering to think he was never the England manager, and apparently Brian Clough wanted the job. So that's I'm just speechless to think about it. But that Damned United, that actor, he portrayed Brian Clough fantastic. And you've seen footage of when the fans are on Nottingham Forest ground, and Clough's rather than the stewards, Clough's just on throwing punches and grabbing the fans and flinging them off, and the guy just took no shit. There's so many people that do good impressions of him. Neil Ruddock is one. Mark Crosley. I've started watching a few of his things, and they get that Middlesbrough tone just perfect. And Brian Clough, he just, he wasn't scared of anyone. He, he went and had a right go at Vinnie Jones or... Yeah, one guy I know told me one of the funniest stories ever. So when he was leaving hang on. When Brian Laws left Middlesbrough about 88, excuse me, 88, 89. So he was playing for Middlesbrough, and Brian Clough, who was a manager of Nottingham Forest, signed him. And he said, Brian, you're coming up to Nottingham. He said, do us a favour. He said, give this, if I give you something, will you pop it in, when he signed him, obviously. So Brian Laws had to go back to Middlesbrough to collect his stuff. And Brian Clough had won this Manager of the Month award, so he got this bottle of whiskey. And so he said, will you do us a favour? Go and knock on my brother's door. He lives up Acklam or somewhere, Tollesby or Matt. You know, it was somewhere, one of the nice parts of Middlesbrough. So Brian Laws got it off Brian Clough anyway. And back, I tell you what it was, he found his address out the phone book. That's how it was. So he knocked on this door. This bloke opened the door, spitting double of Brian Clough. And he said, are you, I can't remember the name, Joe Summit, are you Brian's brother? Absolute spitting double of Brian Clough. And he went, yeah, what's he want? And Brian Laws went, oh, he just wants me to drop this bottle of whiskey off. And Cloughie's brother grabbed it and went, good, greedy bastard. It's about time he brought me something. Just shut the door in his face. And Brian Laws said, you know what? He said, it was just like looking at another Brian Clough. But what a character. Yeah, that man epitomises Middlesbrough. Yeah, you know, I mean, he should have been knighted. And yeah, I need to go along and see that Brian Clough statue myself. And I said to Martin O'Neill, I'm going to take a couple of pictures and send it to him. But yeah, listen, I would have loved to have met him. I personally know people who knew him and grew up in the area with him. And, you know, Middlesbrough had a lot of interesting characters back then. So you had Chris Rea and Brian Clough from the same area. Brian Tilsley in Coronation Street said in his biography, he said, he's talking about all the worst places in the world, and he said, I've walked through Groveville and Middlesbrough and dead of night, and, you know, so that's the area. Wilf Mannion from South Bank, Chubby Brown from Grangetown. Who else is there? Amelia Lilly, she was from Nunthorpe. Bob Mortimer, Tollesby, which is kind of like Martin. Peter Beagley was from North Ormsby, apparently. And he actually learned the backflip that he used to do when he scored his goals so he is from North Ormsby, and he used to go to Keldholm School, and he learned jumping off the cemetery on the border of Berwick, North Ormsby, off the cemetery wall. So when you see Peter Beagley doing the backflip for Man City and Everton, he used to do that every single day, going to Keldholm, walking from North Ormsby to, where's Keldholm? It was like Berwick Park End. But yeah, oh God, loads of Berwick, Phil Stamp. That's the area I grew up in. Oh God, yeah, you know, Middlesbrough. There's a lot more to it than the Lee Duffy books, which a lot of people are jumping on the bandwagon now. I spoke to people last couple of years, and they've been like, "Oh, I'm going to come up." Guy from Kent, guy from Manchester. Spoke to a guy the other day, and he's from Weston-super-Mare, and he said, Jamie, I've got to come up to Middlesbrough and South Bank. I need to get this Lee Duffy thing out my head. I need to just get out my system. So he's coming up to the grave and the commercial and all these things. And yeah, one guy from Kent, Peterborough, and one of them said, oh, I've done all the London tours, the craze and all this. He said, I want to come up to Middlesbrough and do that kind of tour. So there's been a lot of limelight on Middlesbrough the last couple of years when I kind of done quite a lot of true crime books. They're done now, completely done, completed it. Although Chris Rea might ring me yet. Chris, if you're watching, give me a ring, mate, and me and you are going to be great friends at one day. You just actually don't know it yet. But oh, yeah, Chris Rea. Chris Rea is a book I'd actually do for free. I'd write his book just for free, as long as he let me hang around with him. Proper, yeah, greatest Middlesbrough accent. Well, him and Cloughie from the same area. But Brian Clough, yeah, absolute hero man. And, I did meet him when I was young. I just didn't appreciate it. So I would have loved to have just spent a bit of time with him and even just study him, just to just sit back and, the greatest ever, absolutely by far. No one comes close to Brian Clough. I was sadly thinking about going to pay my respects, but unfortunately he's not buried in Teesside. He's buried in Derbyshire with his wife. But Brian would say he's not a North East lad. He was a Borough lad. He was very proud of his Middlesbrough roots. And as I said, it all happened from 17 Valley Road. So if anyone is thinking of going to Middlesbrough, it's a park called Albert Park, which is where his statue is. So if you can come up the park, you can literally walk onto Valley Road, number 17 it was. And that was the house that the young Brian Clough was brought up. And went on to become the greatest face, hands down, to have ever come from the town of Middlesbrough. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on in the comments below. I definitely can't think of anyone far more interesting or great. And that is a word you got to, to describe Brian Clough. Great. The guy was just, as I said, when you think I grew up in the same town as him, it's just like, God, I wish I'd have made an effort when I used to see it about. But in my head, when I was 14, I just saw that's that old bloke who's just got Nottingham Forest relegated. I think it was about 1993. So, and I think that's when he retired. So about 92, 93. But yeah, what a character. I can just watch him all day. So let us know your thoughts. Brian Clough, what a guy.